Welcome to the Holistic Success Show. I'm Elizabeth Lozano.
And I'm Dr. Robert Puff. Today our guest is going to be talking about understanding our body and knowing when to seek medical attention.
We're also going to be watching clips from Dr. Puff about world-class athletes and how we can learn from them to excel in our own life.
And our first question from you is going to be about people that we love. How do we set boundaries with them?
Our second question is about choosing a good mate. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the show.
I'd like to talk today about the training of a world-class athlete and what it entails and how it can actually relate to you and I. So let's start with what does it involve to become a world-class athlete. First, obviously you have to be good at what you do. And then you have lots and lots and lots of training where you're learning your sport and you're practicing it. You're learning your sport and you're practicing it. And as you move up, as you get better, perhaps you start in high school or even elementary school, and you go to college, and then you may head off to the pros or head off to the Olympics. When you reach the highest level that human beings are really capable of, you'll hire yourself a top-notch coach to help you become a world-class athlete. And what the best coaches out there are doing today, sports coaches are doing, they take that athlete, of course they give them the training and then they take them a little bit further than they've gone before. But the most important thing a very good coach will do in today's age is they'll train them when they're finally in the sport, when they're ready to do that race. Let's say you're a sprinter, that you become one with that track and you just run. And what you lose is you lose the commentary. You don't anymore say, am I running well? Am I running fast? Am I going to succeed? Am I going to win? Am I going to lose? Because what we've learned over the years is that keeps athletes from performing their best and at their top level. So basketball, you often hear in basketball about being in the zone, where Michael Jordan may be shooting like 4 3-pointers or 5 3-pointers in a row, boom, 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 swish, in they go, in they go, in they go. And we interview athletes like that. How do you do that? How did you just keep performing at such a high level in a row, one after another, after another, after another? And what they'll tell us is they weren't thinking about winning. They weren't thinking about losing. They weren't thinking anything about the game. They were just playing basketball or whatever the sport may be. So truly, to reach the highest level that we're capable of, we need to really train and be really one with what we're doing. And another story I can give to you that really helps illustrate that is I saw once Olympian people that are heading to the Olympics to be sharpshooters. And what we did, or what the scientists did, they put electrodes on the brains of the sharpshooters, and then they did it with people that were just normal people that had training as being sharpshooters. So the first group, say like you and I, we'd hold that gun and aim it at the target. We'd pull the trigger, and we wouldn't hit the target very well. And what they found is when the brain was firing as you were firing the gun, it went all over the place. It's a very active mind, and there were a lot of waves going back and forth. As when your mind's active, there's a lot of waves going back and forth. But when they put the electrodes on the brain of the sharpshooter, when he or she was aiming at the target, prior to shooting at the target, their mind was just like yours and mine, just all over the place. When they pulled that trigger, when they were right ready to pull that trigger and they hit the mark, their minds became very still, very placid, very calm. And so what they do is they almost become one with their sport, and they get this thing out of the game. And in a sense, they become one with their sport. And really, if that works for top athletes, what if we could apply the same principles into our own lives? What if we could perform in the zone with what we do, whether work, relationships, people, anything that we do, we could actually perform it in the zone like a world top athlete. And in the next clip that we'll have on this episode, I'm going to talk about how you do that. But I do want you to know that is a possibility. So stay tuned. Peace.
Our first question is from Neil R. in Sydney, Australia. I have a girlfriend that I met on the internet. She moved from America to Australia to live with me. We've been together for a few months now, but it seems that we're not getting along very well, and I'm stressing out from her mood she's laying upon me. I care about her, but her insecurity is draining me of my energy as well as my financial security. this is not the first time that she's been through this in another relationship, but I don't think I can help her anymore. Is there any tips you can give me on how to deal with this?
Well, your situation is difficult, and what I see happening here is something is going to be hard because you guys moved in together, not really knowing each other really well. And that in and of itself, you can acknowledge, okay, this is a difficult situation, period. So now, but I'm in this situation and I care for her. So what do I want to do? And what will really help is for the two of you to set boundaries, because it went from nothing to being really intense. So you kind of need to slow it down a little bit. Doesn't mean she necessarily has to move out. But what I'd recommend is saying, okay, how can we spend some time apart? How can, when we start not treating each other well, stop that. Let's take a break. We're feeling a little bit intense right now. And if you need to set those boundaries with her, and because she won't allow them, you just say, or she won't abide by them, you say, hey, right now, this is getting too intense. And you just walk away. You go into another room, or you say, this is going to end. And if you have to raise the bar a bit, meaning you have to get more intense because she's getting more intense, that we lash back. With the intensity comes from moving away, actually. When a person gets more intense, you move away from them, and then by moving away, that will help the situation dissipate. Kind of like you take away the dynamite, and nothing's going to explode. And by you moving away, often I've talked about a fuse, you make that fuse longer because you're not allowing it to get so intense. So because you have this boundary, I'm not going to let it get intense, and we're going to have more breaks. I'm going to care for her, but we are going to have more breaks. That, I think, will help her to interact with you better, and it will help you when she is having a rough time, and if she is insecure, to respond back to her in a loving way. What do you think?
I agree with you definitely. I think there are a lot of things that can be causing a lot of stress within your relationship too. If you're working and maybe she's at home all day, that can build some resentment within you. And for her, that might be really hard for her because she's at home all day. She maybe doesn't know a lot of people in the area. So you guys talking about that and working through that, it can be something that's really important. And you explaining to her, the situation the way it is, I'm feeling a little frustrated with this. Communication is huge in any relationship. So you guys need to work through these things. And I think the boundaries that Dr. Puff had said are really, really important, because if you don't set those boundaries, resentment is going to build, and it's just going to be chaos and frustration, and your relationship's going to end, or you're going to stay in a relationship and be really, really unhappy, which really isn't. That's not what life is about. It's not about being unhappy. It's about creating happiness. We are going to face hard times in our lives, okay? I'm not going to say that that's not going to happen, but you need to take care of yourself. So, go to the gym and work out. Take that time for yourself, because sometimes when a person is moving to a whole new other country, they may feel like really attached to you and don't want to be separated from you, but you need to take care of yourself and encourage her to take care of herself and create new friends. Maybe she can go take yoga or go do some classes or something. So something like that, maybe you can encourage her to do, or maybe find a way where she can start to work, or maybe do things around the house that gives her a sense of, self-esteem or sense of self-worth, because for somebody too, that can actually affect her and affect how she's feeling about herself, and that, that mood that she's laying upon you, maybe she's not feeling good because she just sits around all day.
And I would also add, because I really like what Elizabeth said about caring for her. I think that's a wonderful thing she's suggesting, and do that. She matters too. I know you're frustrated with her, but she matters too. So reach out to her in love, set boundaries, but do it in a really loving way, as Elizabeth said. So thank you.
I'd like to welcome this week's guest to the show today, Dr. Kiki Hurt. She's a medical doctor and has written the book, Mini Medical School, Mini Book 1. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, so can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and then tell us about this book?
Okay, well, I am a medical physician. I am a internist and anesthesiologist, as well as a critical care physician. I am a private practitioner. I work between Los Angeles and Chicago, providing care in the ICU as well as in the operating room.
Oh, so you travel from place to place, huh?
Right.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so can you tell us what the purpose is of this book that you created?
The reason that I wrote this book was so that people would know and understand when they were really sick and it was time for them to go to the hospital. What I noticed in practicing in the ICU as well as in the operating room working with really, really sick patients was that people had time to get to the hospital, but that they just didn't pay attention to the signs, or either they didn't understand the signs. And so the book was written so that you would be able to understand when you were possibly in trouble and needed to get to the hospital before it was too late.
Can you give us an example of that? I think during the break, actually before we started, you were talking to me about somebody who you were speaking with that had numbness in their arm for like 3 days or something. Would that be like,
well,
you got to get some help at that point?
Well, that person's most likely not going to die. That's probably an injury.
Okay.
But more commonly, what I see is you'll have a patient who may start out with some abdominal pain.
Okay.
Okay. And maybe that pain is from the gallbladder, but they don't know what it's from. And so they won't be able to eat or drink or hold down any fluids. They'll be vomiting, nauseated, maybe having some diarrhea for a few days. And they may even have someone in the house with them who's helping them to get back and forth to the bathroom. All the time, their stomach is getting a little bigger. And then finally, that person will end up falling out or fainting or something like that. Then someone will call the paramedics. But this will have been going on for 2, 3, 4 days, sometimes even a week. Well, by the time you get to the hospital, then that means that, your blood pressure is really low. You probably are a little mentally out of it. You're not really able to think well because there's not good oxygen flow to the brain. You need an emergency operation, which puts you at a huge risk because everything about your body is shutting down. And so sometimes they get there just in time and we can save them. But many times people succumb to those type of events.
So what inspired you to write this book? Because it sounds like you have seen a lot of these cases where people are waiting way too long to come in. So can you tell us about what inspired you?
What inspired me to write this book was seeing so many people coming to the hospital when it was too late. Or if it wasn't too late, they were at a point where it was going to require them to stay in the hospital on life support for a prolonged time. Whenever you see patients and they're coming in and they're severely dehydrated, they may be mentally not able to speak for themselves, or they may be in respiratory distress, and that's a person that you have to spend a lot of time and a lot of work trying to get them back to their normal state of health. Many of those patients we were able to get at least back to their normal state, but realize you've gone from what could have meant you've been in a hospital for a couple of days, so now maybe you're in the hospital for a couple of months. And some of those patients, when they get to the hospital, they just don't make it. So that was the inspiration, was to get people to understand and to learn more about their bodies and to know when to come to the hospital so that they can get help, get treatment, and get in and get out.
Wow, I'm really glad that you wrote this book, and I think it's really important for people to hear this and to see this. Okay, so from a medical standpoint, what is the most important thing that a person can do?
The most important thing that a person can do to keep themselves out of trouble is to learn about your body. You have to understand basic information, basic physiology, basic concepts about how your lungs and your heart and your kidney system work. When you understand those basic concepts or understand what vitals mean, then and know how to take your own vitals, then you'll know when something's wrong with your body. That's the whole point of Mini Medical School, Mini Book 1, is to help you to, number one, know what things are urgent and means and are telling you got to go to the hospital now, but to also teach you what's normal and what's not normal. So the most important thing that you can do is to educate yourself. And when you go into the hospital, you go to the doctor, ask questions. If someone tells you something and it doesn't make sense, then you keep asking questions until it does. And if that individual can't make it make sense to you, then you find someone else.
Those are some great words of wisdom. It sounds like you're really trying to empower people too with this book.
Well, that is the whole goal, to empower you to be able to save your own life.
Good. So tell me how this book is beneficial. You've talked about how it's beneficial, but can you expand even more how this book is beneficial to patients, to hospitals, and to the country, and even the world, really, because we're reaching to people all over the place. So.
Okay. Well, let's start with patients. First of all, if you as a patient understand when there's something wrong, if you understand that if you're having a stroke, that you have about 3 to 4 hours to get to the hospital, then you will go to the hospital. So what that means is that you will get to the hospital in time enough that we can give you the medication so that we can either stop that stroke from occurring or getting worse, or even causing your death. Or at minimum, when you get to the hospital, you won't end up staying in the hospital longer than what you have to, or ending up on life support, which all those things not only cost you time and cost you, money possibly from losing work or things of that nature, but cost you money for your insurance company. But also that means that you're going to save yourself a lot of headache and heartache. And then when it comes to the hospital, well, the hospital is going to incur more costs, because no matter how much insurance you have, When people are really, really, really sick, then it costs a lot of money. It costs a lot of money. A lot of resources are used up, from nursing to various drugs to various surgeries to get that person well. So the hospital ends up saving money as well as you. And then when we start talking about the country, well, what you end up happening when people don't get to the hospital on time is people do end up on life support. And sometimes they end up on life support indefinitely, which, they've spoken about on various talk shows that I've been listening to lately, how it's costing a country billions of dollars because you have all these patients in nursing home. You have all these patients that, we're spending money on. They can't speak, they haven't spoken, and they've been sick for years. So if we teach people, we educate people, we educate the country how to get to the hospital quickly, how to recognize when there are problems, then you not only save yourself as a patient to heartaches, but you save the hospital money, you save the country money. So it's beneficial to us all to be educated about our bodies and when we're in trouble.
Wow, you have such an amazing message, and I want to give this book to every person that I love and care about. So
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Where can people get a hold of you and get a hold of the copy of this book?
Well, right now, if you just go to www.hurtmd.com, then you can order the book. We're working on getting the book to Amazon, to Barnes & Nobles, and just to every place that we can get it to, so it's accessible to everyone and anyone. The goal is to put this book in as many languages as possible so that everybody across the world understands and can be educated on basic information and keep yourself alive. It's about empowering you, saving lives through education.
That's wonderful. And I know you also have a blog. Can you share with us your blog?
If you go to Facebook, I have a fan page. It's called Dr. Kiki Hurt, MD, and that's my fan page. And basically what happens is every day, somewhere between the morning and the evening, I'll give a health tidbit on diabetes, hypertension, high blood pressure, stroke, things of that nature. Some of the big things that could kill you, I go over and over every month. But then I add in things that aren't so life-threatening but could be a problem, such as rheumatoid arthritis or cataracts or glaucoma. And then I also allow you to ask me questions. So that if you're uncertain if you should go to the doctor, then you can ask me. But I let you know I'm not your doctor. I'm just your second friend on the internet, just giving you a little bit of advice so that don't feel so threatened, or giving you some questions you should ask the doctor when you go. But that's on Facebook, and that's free. All you got to do is sign up. It's free.
Just like this show. So thank you so much for joining us, and you've got some wonderful words of wisdom, and if you guys get a chance, please check out this book. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
Now for the exciting part. How can you live your life like a world-class athlete? There's a couple parts to it. Like an athlete, first you need to be trained in what you want to do. So you have to decide what that is. If you want to be an excellent mother, for example, you need to learn about mothering. You can't just go upon what you've been learned as what you've been experienced as a child. For example, if Michael Jordan, if he just played with his friends and played basketball, he's not going to make it to the NBA. He's going to study with top people and learn about basketball. If you want to be an excellent mother, or if you want to be an excellent salesperson, you have to learn from the top people and get trained in that. So mothering, sales, whatever you put in there, you first have to start by being trained very well at that. You cannot just, as they say, rest on your laurels. You need to get education and get experience. Like as a mother, you would get experience with your children trying different forms. Like we have a book called Raising Healthy Children and Teenagers. And in that we talk about like timeout and positive reinforcement. So you'd read about it, you'd try it with your children, and say, wow, that really works well. And then you start implementing it on a regular basis to where it reaches a point where it becomes natural, so that when you put them on timeout, you know exactly when to do that, when to withhold, when to praise, when to be with them, and when to take care of yourself. It's the learning how to be an excellent parent, and then doing that through trusting what your training and learning has given you. Same way with sales. So say again, you want to be an excellent salesperson. You need to study from the top salespeople that are out there and really learn about how to salespeople sell well. Practice what they teach you, implement it on a regular basis, and as you perfect your skills, when you finally get to the point that you feel like you are an excellent salesperson, then go out there and sell and try your best to sell. But when you are selling, be in the zone. And what I mean by that is, like the athlete, you don't think about, am I going to make this deal? You don't think about am I going to lose this deal? You just sell, and you do your best, what you've been trained at, and what you'll find is you will do superb and excellent because you're going to be in the zone. Even with mothering, you don't criticize yourself and say, am I a good mother, I'm a bad mother, because you've been trained now very well to be an excellent mother. So then you are an excellent mother and you just do what you've been trained to do. If you find later that you need to readjust and learn some more things, that's great. But it's trusting that what you've been trained to do works and then implementing it. So you have to get trained, get experience, and implementation. But let's say not only do you want to be a great mother, be a great salesperson, or whatever job you can think of that you want to put in there, let's say you want to be an awesome human being. What does that entail? That entails doing things like this, learning about holistic success, putting it all together. Because if you put it all together, what will happen is you will slowly over time get better and better at being a human being, taking care of yourself, slowing down, and learning to love yourself, and all the different things that we talk about here, like meditation, and many other people talk about how to live well too. One of the terms for it in psychology is self-actualization, and that is basically people living to the fullest extent of humanity. It's basically they're at the peak of what human life is like when you live to the fullest and living well. That isn't necessarily, of course, financial success or people love you. It's more so within your heart you feel really great about who you are and how your life is going. And so if you strive in that direction, what it will take is great earnestness. You have to say, I'm really going to be committed to this. I'm going to learn about it, watch this show, learn about other things about how human beings that live well do that. Start implementing that into your life. And then just trusting it. Trusting that the decisions that you make each and every day will move you in that direction. I think that's one of the reasons I love meditation so much. That's why meditation does is it grounds me throughout the day, because I do it in the morning and do it at night, and it keeps me focused on the here and now, which I think is one of the ultimate bases of being healthy as a human being. So if you have that grounding there, that silent awareness that you learn through meditation, you then can be 100% present with what is happening right here, right now, and live to your fullest capacity. Live richly, fully, each and every day. So I encourage you to live in the zone. Live like a world-class athlete and have a beautiful life. Peace.
Our second question comes to us from Cynthia T. in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm dating someone who I really care about and we're thinking about marriage, but he has some behaviors that are hard for me. Should I expect change or should I accept him for who he is before I marry him?
Cynthia, I'm really glad you asked that question because it's an important question for a lot of people out there who are in the process of finding their mate to spend their life with. Because whoever you meet, no matter who they are going to have things in them that don't work for you, that you don't resonate with. But the hope is that they have enough that does work well for you, that I really love this quality and that quality and this quality. And it's kind of almost like a percentage thing. If 75% of them is awesome and 25% of them doesn't work really well, I think you've got a pretty good match there. I mean, they may change, but hoping if it's 50-50 or 60-40 in the negative direction, saying, well, if I really love the 40%, but that 60% really bothers me, but I'll change it, that's a very, very dangerous way to enter a relationship. It is far better to enter it saying, what if they never change? Could I work towards living with this? And if you say yes to that, you say, yeah, I really love who they are, so if they never do change, I'll be happy. But I would also carry it one step further. Not only when I say, could I live with this? If you choose to live with them, then try to like the traits that they have. My wife has some traits when I first met her. I thought, oh, that's a little different. But I've actually learned to embrace them. Probably a good one is she goes at a different pace than I do. And so when we travel, I used to like to see a lot of things. And she would like to more kind of enjoy the trip more and not see as much. And at first I was like, oh, we're not seeing as much because, this is our limited trip. We're on vacation. I want to see a lot. And I actually learned to slow down. And now I much prefer traveling her way. So actually I ended up changing in the sense of going at a slower pace. And I enjoy traveling so much more now because when I come home from a vacation, I don't need a vacation from my vacation. So you might even be able to embrace some of the differences and say, this might be something I can learn. So I would encourage you to say, can I live with this? And if you can, given all the positive, then yes, definitely marry them. What about you? What do you think?
I definitely agree with you in many ways, but there's another part of it that I see that, if that 25%, let's say there's a 75% that you guys have a lot of similarities and you really like, and there's that 25% that maybe not so much. I would encourage you to look at also what that 25% is, because if it's something where you're being abused, or he's not treating you right, or he's disrespecting, or he's got behaviors, he's using drugs, or there's a lot of things sometimes that can be really damaging. And if there are things like that, or maybe he's not working and it's like a continuing thing that he's not looking for it, those are things you need to be concerned about. And so you do need to balance out and look and see how much does he have that I really like who he is as a person, because there are some little things, maybe he leaves the toilet seat up, or he doesn't, just little things. There could just be things that you guys don't have in common sometimes, and those things can be worked past, absolutely. But if they're fundamental things that you're thinking to yourself, the only way it's going to work out is if he changes these things, then you need to pay attention to that, because you should be with somebody for who they are, not for who you want them to be. And I think we can sometimes have this vision of what we want in a relationship, or perhaps we can have conversations with somebody. And I have had this in the past, in my own past relationships, where, it was like, I'm going to do this, and 3-4 years down the line, those things still didn't happen while I was proceeding with my life. And so I was growing and they weren't. And it ultimately came to the point where I said, I love you, but I can't be with you for who I want you to be. And sometimes you do have to make that decision. But I encourage you to really think about those things, and also talk with your partner about it. But also you have to be aware you can't just go just based on what somebody says. You need to really pay attention to their actions.
I really like what Elizabeth said, and I think the thing to keep in mind though too is that after you get married and you do find, or you're in a relationship, you do find that 25% was a lot more than you thought, like it is something that's really you can't deal with, then you need to say, let's seek help for this, and let's see if we can change that, because you may need help changing it. But if they can't change it and it is really unbearable for you, then you make the changes and talk to other people inside yourself to set boundaries and learn how you can grow and say, is this something I can live with? And if you can't, and they're not going to change, then you need to make choices based upon that, not saying someday they'll change, because it is very, very difficult for people to change unless they're very, very motivated to change.
Absolutely. So, and to piggyback off of what he just said, is that he needs to want to change. You cannot just force a person to change.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your question, and we wish you all the best in your life and in your love. This week's quote is by Marianne Radmacher, and I love this. I think it's such a beautiful quote. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage is the quiet voice at the end of the day saying, I will try again tomorrow. And I think it really does take a lot of courage for us to get up after we've failed. But I have found, and I think many people have found in life, that is how we succeed, is when we get up and we have the courage to try again. So I encourage you, try again. Thank you for joining us on the Holistic Success Show. Please check out our Meditation for Health podcast, available on iTunes and our website.
And we also are available to speak at your organization and help your company grow and be successful.
Thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful week, and we look forward to seeing you next time.